Hello and welcome back to the latest podcast. It's about identity and the importance of being yourself. Today's podcast is brought to you by Janet,
Angus,
Patrick,
and Caroline.
To support our discussion today, we're going to be referring to the Calm website, which has 14 steps on how to be yourself, which is easier said than done in today's world. So what we're going to go with is, why is it important to be yourself? I'm going to bring in Patrick to start us off with embracing and expressing your true self. How would you like to start us off?
It's not an easy topic, so when I mentioned that I was going to be doing a podcast about being your authentic self, people are saying, oh, that's an interesting one. So I think it strikes a chord with a lot of people. How do you actually get to the root of who you really are? Especially in a world where we've got a lot of social media, people play particular roles, whether it's in their job or their home life. The sort of difference between your public persona and your private persona, which I think everybody now has with the advent of social media. On reflection, I think being my authentic self is sort of just trusting in my sort of gut feelings, trying to navigate my own course in terms of my creativity, my music, not necessarily following what everybody else does as well, and trying to stay true to my own values. And an important thing as well, which we'll probably discuss during the course of the podcast, is sort of asserting yourself and setting boundaries as well, to say that's not okay, or that's kind of what I want to do, and not necessarily be driven by other people's judgment of what you should or shouldn't be doing. So that helps in terms of trying to just be yourself, I think.
And Caroline?
So when you put that question out, I kind of think, why is that so important? What do we mean by that? And I suppose why it's important is that it's good for our mental health if we're true to ourselves and honest to ourselves. And it's probably better for our relationships at work, with our family, if we're really true to ourselves, because we're not burning up energy trying to be something else. What does it really mean? I suppose you really need to know yourself. How do you do that with all the sort of other distractions that are around in the world today? It's a tricky one.
It is. And what about you, Angus?
Caroline and Patrick both kind of more or less were going to say what I was going to say, so it's just about the usual of just being yourself and all that. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into this later, because when I was younger, I definitely pretended to be someone who I was not, and that was causing issues, especially during my teens, where a lot of things just go racing on in your head, and just learning so much about myself and just being an adult now, you just think like, wait a minute, doing all that stuff back then was not such a good idea, despite what some of the others and even teachers would suggest, which is awful. So being myself and just expressing it to other people and all that has definitely helped.
Yeah, I think it's how we explore our personal values and beliefs and our passions, which is the first step in the Calm website. You could do this by keeping a journal. There's loads of things that we can do. Positive affirmations, celebrating our strengths. I haven't actually answered it for myself, have I?
It's a tricky, when you put it out there, we think when you say what is authentic self and identity and things like that, you think, oh yeah, that's straightforward. But actually when you really look at it for yourself, it becomes a trickier, we understand what it means, but actually when you start
really difficult.
doing it for your inner self, it's a bit trickier, I think.
Yeah.
I think I struggle with identity in all sorts of way. I fit into loads of, if we want to put people in boxes, lots of different boxes: female, neurodivergent, black, mixed race, loads of other things that I can't even think about at the moment. Each one has its own identity that doesn't necessarily work with the other, and in some situations you can't always be your true self, because it's for whichever identity it is. Some parts of society don't allow you to be your true self. There are all sorts of struggles from school, from not fitting into one, not fitting into the other. I suppose it's a case of I'm still lost and still trying to find where my true identity is.
It's interesting because I think it's those differences that make us stronger. Whereas when you're in a school and people are exhibiting different, like maybe bullying behaviour or making fun of people that are different, it's those people that are different that could actually change the world. If you think of some of the big sort of business leaders that have brought about changes in the world, they just thought about things differently and said, I'm going to do this. And that's really valuable as a whole for humans, I think. Embrace differences.
I find it quite interesting earlier you mentioned about one of the things was keeping a journal, because mentioned in one of the previous episodes, I can't remember what the context is off the top of my head, because I've been keeping that for like 12 years plus now, I think. And I do read back on it, because every single day from then till now has been filled with stories. So like not only stuff like my grammar has improved by a lot, but also things like, wow, I've really evolved as a person. Because even back then, I think I claimed to be like the open-minded type person, but looking back, it's like, was I really? Definitely a lot of room for improvement. And one thing I noticed in my journal a lot is just how I'm not afraid to be honest about myself. So if I, some crazy person coming up to me, are you gay? Because if you are, you're a bad person. I'll be like, I'll be honest and to say like, yeah, I'm, well, pansexual actually. If that's your problem, then that's your problem, not mine, So I'm just gonna be honest. Like, I'm not gonna pretend to be someone just to try and please other people, because then what are we doing? Because if you pretend to have to be someone else to please other people, then what does that say about that person,
Yeah.
And again, I like to assume ignorance over malice on that person.
Yeah.
But, then, because I'll tell them in a calm way, like, this is why I disagree, why we, with whatever. But if they're gonna continue just to be homophobic or whatever, then then was like, well, I tried my best to reason with them calmly.
Exactly, and that's one of the points that the Calm website uses. It's dismiss others' judgment of you and remind yourself of your values that don't depend on others, which is exactly what we need to do. And it is difficult to do that because, you can get hurt by the smallest of things. We all have a shield, but sometimes that shield isn't necessarily strong enough to dismiss it. And it's really good that where you mentioned about your journal, that you embrace the change and the growth, which is part of the life and opportunity to grow, which is, seeing that even your grammar, that in itself is a brilliant thing.
It is.
I think one thing that's really important as well about authentic self is we change and grow and evolve. So we don't ever stand still. So the person you were when you were 14 trying to figure it out, and the person you are later on, I won't say what age I am, but there's been a growth and a journey. So they're the same person, but their view of the world and how they see things and how they are to themselves, it changes and it grows.
One thing that I find quite irritating about when there's some people trying to say like, oh, you can't be your authentic self or whatever, or you can't do this or that or whatever, you have to. If you're male, you have to do that, or if you're female, you have to do this. Like, one thing that really bugs me about that is like, yeah, that's none of their business. But also, like, as part of human evolution, humans are always changing all the time. Like, because even people who are like people who tend to be very conservative, like, are like very less conservative than they were back then. Because did you know, like, years and years ago, people used to, there was like some people like complain like, oh, back in my day, people always called me sir this or sir that, like in the 50s or whatever. So, but even people who are conservatives don't do that anymore. So that's just a point of like change, like, because they generally don't like change and want people to be stuck in boxes. So but even they're changing too. So that's why I just don't like the idea of people telling people that they can't explore, because as part of human evolution, we're always changing. And so I think people should just express themselves.
And that's also part of the letting go of the past, which, is difficult. We can do it, if we've got sort of, a good support around us, and you build a network of people who respect and encourage you, then we can let go of the past and be more open to all of our vulnerabilities, I suppose.
Yeah. And by keeping a journal and all of those things, you can have that reflection, so you can take those lessons from the past.
I think it's interesting to reflect on environments where you could feel you could actually be your authentic self and express your ideas. And I know when I've been in those environments, which on reflection haven't been a lot, very common in a lot of the various sort of job roles I did, I felt actually really feel heard, listened to, understood, appreciated. All these sort of positive things happen just from people sort of they don't always have to agree, but they kind of say, okay, I kind of understand, I get where you're coming from. And it's really powerful to be in those environments. I just wonder, from your guys' perspective, have you been in environments that sort of spring to mind where you go, wow, that was really great?
Well, I actually think this environment, like this group that we have, it is so empowering because we all hear each other, we all see each other. That in itself, we all know our own boundaries, but we also are support. And I didn't really answer that very well. But
I think that's a good example because he was looking for an example. So
Yeah.
actually, Janet, I think that's a really good example that you found a group that you feel heard and seen
And being myself.
and you could totally be yourself and you
100%.
don't have to put a mask on, and that's really important.
Yeah.
And I've experienced that in some creative collaborations that I've done with people in the past where I've found a creative group where there weren't all these egos and people were just enjoying being creative together and hearing each other. And I think that doesn't always happen in the world of the arts and music, but when you find it, it's quite lovely and quite special.
it is, and that's also one of the other points in express your creativity. Creativity can be a powerful tool to self-discovery, because even when you just doodle, you'll be surprised at what you let go. You're thinking of issues that you had from the past. It gives you sort of almost like an adrenaline that you feel strong, that you can go and you can do it. I'm all up for people doing art and creative things. Do any of you do anything creative?
So I do a lot of, but I do occasionally do like digital art stuff, animations, and music making and all that. Because I used to do a lot of sound stuff at college. Not getting any jobs out of it, sadly. I just tried to keep that passion up, even if it's by myself, really.
Yeah, that's good to do.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's fun. Like, the only time I get to really do that type of stuff with other people is with the music groups we mentioned in a few podcast episodes ago, where I'm just playing the double bass in the background, which is fun, yeah. It's short, but it's still fun. But
Maybe we could get you in to do the double bass one time.
well, I'd be up for that.
We can have you on the double bass, Patrick on guitar.
I've got no rrhythm.
We'll just clap
Triangle.
along.
even clapping.
Triangle.
Yeah. We can be the dancers, and nobody will have the
Washboard.
pleasure of seeing that on the podcast. Creativity is a really interesting one because one of the things it does is if you've got a very noisy brain that has lots of thoughts and lots of voices and it feels very loud, creativity can actually shut that all
It
down
does.
for a little bit. So if you're playing music, drawing, painting, but it doesn't need to be what we think of as the traditional arts like writing and music. It can be baking, it can be bread making is a great one for really
Pounding the bread.
pounding the bread and
Or if you're me, you're like got a really massive desk now and just using it as like a Lego diorama now. So
Lego's great. Yeah, Lego's great. Any of those jigsaw
It's still
puzzles.
creative.
Yeah,
Yeah.
jigsaw puzzles, Lego, any of those things, cake making, dressmaking, interior design. Like, you know, it doesn't need to be the traditional things that we think of.
Yeah.
People
Even
are
gardening.
Yeah, gardening.
Gardening takes you away. You can focus on really small parts and watch things grow and develop. And there's so many other things that we could class as creativity.
absolutely.
It's interesting that the emphasis we put on creativity versus, say, working in a bank or working, say, as in a trade is sort of feels less than in terms of its value compared to those business, so-called business sort of roles that we play, whereas it's so intrinsically valuable to our mental health and to how we explore the world, which Angus was talking about, and how we feel about ourselves. So it's almost like when we're in school, we learn how to maybe paint or draw or play some music, and then as we get older, it's kind of, unless you're pursuing that particular career path, it's left as a sort of a hobby in the background. But yet, if we lost a lot of the famous artists, musicians, poets, philosophers, what sort of world would we live in if they weren't around? So it'd be great to see more importance and emphasis and value and funding brought towards the arts, I think.
Yeah, and that's another point. Celebrating your strengths and focus on the things that you do well. It doesn't always have to be in the corporate world, or it's however and whatever makes you happy. And I think this all leads into the prioritising of self-care. We've all got different things. Some people will have a bath. I can't stand baths. I get too hot. I get too irritable, and it's. I'd rather just have a shower. It works.
I love a bath. It's lovely. Yeah. Have some music on in the background. Don't do candles, but yeah, I do love a bath and the music on and just soak. It's lovely.
I've even tried it with a glass of wine, some music, and I just get so bored in a bath.
But still, like you say, it's different things for
Yeah.
different people.
Yeah. So how does everyone set boundaries? Boundaries is a really difficult thing that I know I've always struggled. I've always been a people pleaser and say yes. And I've only recently started the value or learnt the value of no. Or I can't do that now, but I'll do it later.
Boundaries ones is I think, been a bit more of a tricky one for me, especially recently, because as we were planning this episode, and I've mentioned it to you a lot, that I've had someone saying some very inappropriate comments to me, especially when they found out I was living by myself and that I was pansexual and all that stuff. Me being the type of person that finds it very difficult to say no, because this was a person who stands outside, just says hello, just like, oh, hello, and then just leave, and that's been going on for like months, and then just that one time he decided to overstep his boundaries and all that, and felt extremely uncomfortable to the point where I did tell the people at the campus about this, and at one of the groups, one of the members who was very kind enough to accompany me. Thankfully he wasn't there, but thankfully with her support I was able to do my shopping, and then it was just nice because I feel a bit more comfortable.
Yeah, you had support.
I think it was also just have a bit of like joy also going shopping, because it's like it's just like it's with one of these groups that tends to help other people. That's nice.
So it put some joy back in a situation where your boundaries were challenged.
Coming back to the whole boundary thing, is just trying to because it's difficult, because I get people talking about my hair probably like 3 times a month or whatever. So
And it is gorgeous.
thanks. Yeah, I don't mind people saying that. It's because I know for other people, they don't like it when their appearance is commented. Because, I've seen some people, like yesterday I saw someone with some reddish purple hair, and it looked amazing. It's like, it would be nice to say, like, in Canway, just to say to that person, like, you have nice hair or something, or like someone from the radio group I used to go to for a week in Edinburgh had like amazing dreadlocks with had some amazing kind of white-ish dye on some parts. It's difficult to describe. It looked amazing. It's like, I wish I could say like her dreadlocks look amazing, but I don't want to push my boundaries.
But then why can't we compliment other people? I see women wearing dresses or men wearing nice tops, whichever they are. It's nice to get a compliment.
Yeah.
Do you know, I think it's about acceptable behaviour, isn't it? And I think it's acceptable to put something positive out there, so long as it's done in a way that is sort of suggestive. Yeah, so if you were in a group and somebody comes in and their hair looks great, you could say, gosh, your hair looks great today. I don't know that anybody would be upset about, or you look really good today.
Yeah, I think it's really difficult with boundaries because we are a respectable group that are kind, considerate, and we care about other people even if they don't care about us. Outside world is not always the same. It's a boundary between giving someone a compliment and actually touching someone's hair. I've been in a lift when someone's just touched my hair. If you know me, that's fine. But ask, and even then I might say no, because it's still, you don't just go up and just start, people.
I get that quite often sometimes, and that's kind of like
I think that's inappropriate.
That is inappropriate.
I think there's a personal boundary as well. So that's where touch sort of crosses that for people, and you should have a choice whether you allow that or not. My experience of boundaries, which I've struggled with as well, is to trust in a feeling that you get when you're in a situation, and then do something behaviourally that changes the outcome. Typically, what I would have done in the past is gone, that's not sort of aligned with my values. It's crossed the boundary. Didn't vocalise anything. Then went away and ruminated on it for like up to a week or longer instead of actually changing it. So more recently I've started to go against that sort of pattern and start to vocalise if something is not acceptable to me. So an example recently was sound levels were loud near where I lived, and I went and spoke with a person, and in the past I would have gone, oh, what if this doesn't work out well, because you start to get into sort of conflict and the repercussions of that. But I found that the person was receptive. They changed their behaviour because I made them aware. They weren't really aware, and it worked out well. And I felt really good that day after doing that, because I had vocalized a particular boundary that was important to me, and that person was like, yeah, that's totally fine. And I think as humans it's good to push boundaries, and children do it all the time, but if you notice with children, parents sort of set those boundaries so the children know where the container is, whereas with adults we tend not to do that because we're trying to get other people's approval and validation. We're changing our behaviours to
wanna
be
fit
nice,
in.
but often that's maybe not being nice to the other person. And I've other examples where people have said things and have actually had spoken up and said, if you had done that, maybe this would be different. And then they've stopped because I've basically said that's where my boundary is now. And then when they see that, they know that they can't. Because sometimes people just don't know what that boundary is.
No, not at all. And you've led really nicely into the acknowledging your vulnerabilities, that recognise that you are vulnerable. It's actually a sign of strength, whereas we all see it as a weakness, but it's not. It is
definitely,
strength, because for you to stand up and face your own fears is a huge, improvement for yourself.
Yeah, and for some people it's not a big deal. They would just do it casually, and approach people.
And I think in some of those, when you've sort of put forth, well, that's a boundary for me, and somebody continues to push against that, you can remind yourself that you don't have to be there.
Yeah.
Given a present that you didn't want, you wouldn't have to accept that. And it's the same with bullying. So when people are being rude or whatever, what you make a decision, am I going to accept that, or am I going to let them hold on to that and bring that home, and they can share it with their family and their friends, but I'm not taking it home with me. I know that's easier said than done. But when I said, I was like, when I hear negative things that I'm not going to take them home with me. I will challenge them, but I'm not going to take them home with me. And I thought it was interesting. I know it's easier said than done, but because we're not always going to have people respect our boundaries, and it's about taking ourselves away from that. They are not the people for us if that's the case.
On the bullying though, it's like, as long as that, it might just be the way how I heard it, but it's just to make sure it's not, as long as it doesn't fall into the ignore the bully and they'll go away category, because that ever works.
Well, I've done that so many times, and it's always been in a work situation with my boss or bosses. They see you as, a smiley, happy person, and they think, oh, I can walk over you.
I'm not suggesting at all. I'm saying that you don't have to accept that. You don't have to accept that thing and take that home with you, and you deal with
property. So an analogy that I came across previously is, if somebody is cooking food in the next door neighbour's garden, would you reach over and grab some of that? So
if you know your neighbour well.
But by doing that, you're actually taking on somebody else's emotion and somebody else's feeling. And there's people out there will project out those emotions to other people. And it's up to you to say, well, actually, that isn't mine, that's yours. And it took me a long time to realise that. Well, this feels like it's mine if that person said this thing about it, but it's not. It's actually them.
Societal pressures and cultural pressures, and sometimes workplace pressures, where the idea of banter, and if you can't take a joke and stuff, that can be tricky.
That always seems to overstep the boundaries. Always, because you've got a lot of old school people that aren't, say, politically correct in their vocabulary. It's what they know, and they don't know change. Because they used to get laughs, they think that it's still acceptable. There's a time and a place when people can do things like that.
It's not a joke if it's a joke at somebody else. It's not funny if it's at the expense of somebody else. That's what I always think. Whereas you can have banter that's about silliness, that isn't pinpointing anybody else's traits or who they are, or making people feel uncomfortable. There's a lot of banter about cakes in our office. There's a lot of joking about cakes. And I don't think that is upsetting for anybody.
No. Even a baker like Prue Leaf wouldn't find offence to, I'm sure.
I've worked in organisations where they often talk about culture, and it always intrigued me what they actually felt was their culture. Because when you've got, say, 100 and 200 people, and small organisations start off, and maybe like our group here is quite small, maybe 5, 6 people, 7 people. But when you start to expand, how do you retain a sense of that camaraderie, that support, that being yourself within a larger organisation? If you're, say, suddenly in 1,000 people organisation, how do you say, well, what is this organisation about? So that's where your values are really important in an organisation. So it's kind of similar to an individual's desire to be authentic.
It's really difficult from my experience. The cultural background has been Caribbean, it's been British, Indian, Jewish. So I've got a lot of cultural backgrounds that I fit into. But some on appearance will say, well, you don't fit in that one because you're maybe not black enough, or you don't fit in that one because you're not white enough. I've been told that I'm not black, and it's like, how can someone tell me I'm not? It's like, it's really difficult to fit in when you've got the social side of this is what is perceived as a black person, this is what perceived is as a white person, this is what is perceived as a Jewish person. It astounds me how people don't just accept.
They can be very gatekeepy about it.
Yeah,
But it's interesting because what you're describing there can feel quite limiting. Your national identity, where you're from, the way you speak, the clothes you wear, the colour of your skin, all these different things. But when you shed some of that and you suddenly become just a human being living on a planet, then what happens? That's really interesting to me.
Well, that's when we're our true self, isn't it?
Yeah, and
because
that's
we're
when I
more
feel better.
alike
Yeah.
than we realise.
Yeah. Having the strength to be able to shed it all. I'm neurodivergent and I've only recently just started sharing it because I was ashamed, and I've got my quirks with it. People that know me, they accept me as me. But it's been a huge cloud to try and get people to even understand it, because I don't understand it. How can you explain something when you're like, this is just how I learn, it's just me? So then you have to put the mask back on to be accepted. It will take myself longer to do something than the others, or I'll go around it a complete random way and they're like, well, why are you doing that? It's like, well, I can see 10 lines down, but you're focusing on this bit. So it's very difficult to be your authentic self when you're neurodivergent, especially when there's expectations as well.
What would be lovely is to get rid of all the boxes that people have to be in. I struggle, I'm not neurodivergent, but I struggle with how, you do that, so you can't do that because you do this. And I just think, well, why can't I do all the things that I like? I don't have to be one thing. I can be lots of things because I've got lots of interests. And that's okay. So I just would love to get rid of all the boxes
Let's be overlapping circles.
Yeah,
But would you say that this putting people in boxes thing, or putting them in categories, is starting to get worse again? Some certain countries, that's getting much worse now, because it's kind of encouraged some of that stuff to happen here, because now there's more transphobia now as a result of it.
I think, in my opinion, we're saying all the right words, ticking the boxes as a country, but it doesn't necessarily carry on into actions. I can only talk about what I know. I don't know about others.
There have been people out there with very dangerous and, unethical views, but then with some chatting and self-reflection or whatever, and actually being exposed to the real world or whatever, some of these people have changed. So it is possible. Earlier about talking about hearing some of these people on the right or whatever, and just, I would want to hear them out and what their concerns are, because get this discussion going and talk about these things, and hopefully point out stuff like the concern isn't foreigners, it's billionaires, something that very obvious. Convince them just because someone's skin color is a different shade, or just because someone is attracted to someone who's the same gender as them, doesn't make them bad.
That's another point. Stand firm in your truth, uphold your values and beliefs, and be honest with yourself and others. There may be conflict, but you can express your viewpoint, which is absolutely something that we all must do.
How we're going to change people, make people be a bit more open-minded, and kind of not going to have a reasonable discussion with them.
And I think that goes back to boundaries, where you have a boundary and somebody's crossed over it and really stepped on your values, and you say to them, actually, that's not the way I see the world. I see it like this. And if they go, all right, I'm going to respect that, there can be a friendship there, and that you can agree to disagree. Where if they go, oh, well, you're completely wrong and that's really stupid, then I think you just have to walk. Unless there's dialogue on both sides, I don't think it works.
Even some political stuff, there's just some people's identity too, where they don't like. So I'm a person, people who are listening can clearly tell, I'm a very left-leaning person. Does that mean I'm going to love and be attached to every left-leaning thing? No, because there's a lot of left-wing groups and figures out there that I really do not like, because I think there's some of them are just a bad example. The point is, if a political party that I voted for started doing something wrong, I would definitely call it out. Whether I think some other people, if they voted for something but they're starting to do something bad that even they don't like, sometimes they'll just pretend that it's oh no, this is fine. The eggs in America being more expensive, that's fine.
I suppose it's about getting rid of those boxes again, and being true to yourself and understanding what are your values and living by those values.
And practicing self-respect.
I think there's a certain element of courage as well that you need to sort of stand up and say, this is what I I'm about.
Yes.
I'm open to other people's views and changing, but I think it's really helpful when you have a supportive group. So you talked about it, Janet. We're a supportive group, and we really robust interactions, and it's really healthy. And I think if you have that, then you can kind of step out into the world like the little bird in a nest wanting to take its first flight. You kind of have the encouragement of your parent to sort of help you. When you have that, you can sort of go out into the world and come back and say, right, today I overcame something, I set a boundary, or I asserted myself, and that's really powerful to have that sort of support group and friend group that you can do that with.
Even with friends group, it's like my friends I hold dearly. I love them all so much. But even within the friends, there's still boundaries that have to be set, that it will be different for each friend, because something might have happened with one, something might have happened with another, so that it's still a boundary. I'm lost where I was going with that one.
Support, maybe.
Support, yes, exactly. Thanks for reading my mind. They all provide support, and just getting a message from them, just getting a little update on what's happening.
But this type of support you get from different people is quite individual, because
It
they're
is.
individual as well.
Yes.
So for example, you might have one friend who's really huggy, and you're okay with accepting hugs from that person, and then something happens and your other friend who isn't huggy, they all of a sudden do this weird hug with you, and both of you feel
they
like
don't want to.
this isn't right. This person isn't a hugger. Usually they make me a cup of tea, and that's the type of support. That's maybe bringing it down quite small. But I think even if the relationships you will have and the boundaries you will have with different people will be to do with how your personalities match, and those sort of things.
And also the identity of how they see us.
And how they see us, their perception of us, their perception of themselves, all those sort of things, because everybody's in it. I don't know if that's made sense, what
It
I'm
has.
saying.
It has.
I think if you're being your authentic self as well, is when you're trying to do something different in the world, you can be limited potentially from your family and friends saying, I get it quite a bit where it's like, oh, you wouldn't normally do that, or why are you doing this? But like you, Caroline, I've got lots of different interests. So of course I want to try different things and, play music, or trying to think of some of the other things I do, play golf, or I just like to do that as a person. And I think when you start to exhibit that and you sort of have that consistency of behavior, people start to go, actually, okay, I didn't see that side of them. People meet me and they say, oh, you're really quiet, and then they see me performing on stage or something, go, oh, actually, you're not really quiet, are you? I like to sort of change that predictability as well, and to sort of challenge people to kind of go, you can do it too.
And I suppose that's a really good point. So when we see ourselves thinking, oh, that's really strange that they've done that, then maybe we should think that we haven't seen that whole person. And that's quite interesting.
That links in, Patrick, to everything you said about prioritising self-care. We can all do self-care in many different ways, and people will only know you for this, and then they see you on stage and you're totally different. We know you as the Patrick here. We all have different identities maybe when we're with different people or different places. We have identities that are acceptable or suitable for the situation maybe.
Yeah, it's like chameleon, definitely been like a chameleon in my life, where I'll alter my behaviour depending on the environment that I'm in. But as I've gotten older, I've realised that actually you can just be yourself and speak your truth. And some people might go, oh, or you might actually have some really good interactions because of it.
It always opens a few doors. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, for you, Janet, have you found situations where you just felt you couldn't sort of be that person that you are?
In most of the situations that I've experienced before, I accepted that I am neurodivergent. Every situation before, I've always had some guard, I've always had some mask. I've had people say to me, you're not neurodivergent. Can you go to your doctors about it? Every single situation. So I can only say that I'm being my authentic self probably in the last couple of years. And I've had a lot of years behind me.
It's learned over life almost, isn't it?
Yeah. All those little boxes that I've previously been put in, I'm this massive circle.
I think for me, they think even more so. I just don't pretend to be someone who I'm not anymore. Like, I'm trying to think. The only time I did have to pretend, like when I was 24, I was with a very abusive, like both mentally and physically abusive relationship, and that was traumatizing. So there was a lot of like masking for that. But nowadays, like, I just don't really feel like I had to pretend to be someone anymore, because like the campus
good.
I go to and this wee group, I can just be open and honest with myself and all that, and just even talking about like the creepy guy in a very stereotypical masculine manly place that would be looked down upon if you were talking about that type of stuff. But here I can just be open and honest, like it's actually bothering me, and I greatly appreciate that. And it's just, and the same with the campus I go to, and can talk about, and obviously I won't say what the people they're going through, but like they've probably been going through some stuff, so like we can then talk about how we've been feeling and what's been affecting us. And the only time I feel like I have to be masking is like, well, when we're helping out the toddlers group, because you don't want to be yapping about politics to them. you don't want one of the parents to go up like, Angus, why is my daughter's first words are capitalism is bad? I mean, it'd be funny, but nah. So that's like the only time where I'm gentle.
But it also sort of what you've said, it reminds us that we are enough, and to do positive affirmations. We are enough, all of us, every single human being. We're all enough.
Exactly.
And we don't need to try so much. Being your true self is something that we all agree we all want. We want to do it more. We're going to set more boundaries if we need to, and always have the support groups that we need. Societal pressures, I think I'll always struggle with, and cultural pressures. But role identity, I'm just me.
I'm just me too.
And I like everyone who is themselves. You're all lovely people. Something from nature, as we're going to come to the end of this wonderful podcast about identity. So you could be that you start looking for a change in the season. I actually saw the first leaf off the tree fall today. So the first one has been shed. We're leading into the late summer, and there's loads of blackberries and apples that are around. So enjoy getting out in nature.
Yeah.
Enjoy being your authentic self, and we'll meet again on the next podcast.
It's the end of summer and they're already putting up Christmas stuff in the shops. It's annoying me. No wonder life feels so short.
We'll just say thank you again to the Toll Booth for the use of their facilities. If you are interested, please go to the Calm website for the 14 steps of wellbeing, which we have referred to.
Or 14 steps of how to be your authentic self.
That's it. We're at the Toll Booth again, and we'd like to thank them for allowing us to use their wonderful studio. Thank you.
As well, Janet, you've been fantastic. First time hosting this podcast, and you've done a really fantastic neurodivergent influenced job.
Thank you very much.
Well done.